Now I'd like to show you another feature of the Entity Framework Designer, updating a model from the database. I've made some changes to the database. I added a column to the customer table. In the sales order shipping table, I changed the ship method from a randomly entered string to an int, so we can select a method from the reference list instead of just typing something in. And I added a brand new table. So now I want to apply these changes to the model. In the designer surface, I can right-click for the context menu and then choose Update Model from Database. The Add tab shows anything in the database that's not already represented in the metadata. I don't mean that it's not in the conceptual model, but rather in the section of XML that the wizard created earlier to represent the database objects. So any new tables, views, procedures, or functions will be listed in here along with any that you didn't choose earlier, like these 3 stored procedures. Also, if I had deleted an entity from the model and said yes to the question about removing the related store schema information, then that table will also show up on this list. So we're seeing the new table I created as well as the stored procedures that I didn't select before. If you've modified a table schema, it's not in the add list. Instead, the refresh page lists all the items that were selected earlier, and the wizard will automatically update those. This is where the changed ship method type will get picked up, as well as my new column in the customer table. If I'd removed objects from the database that the model is dependent on, they'll be listed here on the delete pages. So before I can go ahead and finish this up, I want to be sure to go back to Add and select my new table. I want that to be brought into my model. Now I can go ahead and click Finish. Right away, I can see the customer entity has been updated to show the new column I added to the customer table. Since the customer entity is mapped to the table, then the designer just assumed that since it knows about a new column in the table, it should add that to the mapped entity. Now, I don't have the entity that maps to sales order header shipping on this particular diagram, so let me go back to the model browser and open up the complete diagram, and we'll look at that property. So first of all, the properties of the property still show that the type is string. Now, originally it was a string because in the database it was originally an nvarchar, but I changed it in the database. This is one thing that updating the model from the database won't do. It won't alter or remove existing properties. So even though the type has changed in the source schema, the type for the property in the entity didn't get automatically updated, because that could create a problem down the road in any code that's already dependent on this. And a problem like that you might not find until runtime. But if I try to validate this model, the problem will show up right away, which is this validation error here. This is telling me that the mapping is invalid because currently ship method, which is a string, is mapping to ship method in the store schema, which is an int. So let's look at the mappings here, the table mappings. You can see it didn't remove the mapping, but the mapping is now broken because Entity Framework is not able to coerce an int to a string or vice versa. So the way the designer handles this, it kind of ensures that you're going to see the problem before runtime. I'm seeing this problem right away, and I can deal with the problem right away. And what I'll do is change the ship method to be an int. And if I already have existing code that's dependent on that, I'm going to have to go through and fix up that code. That's not a small shift in domain logic to go from, I want to just type a random string in here, to I want to have a drop-down list. So it's no surprise that there is going to be a little more work to do in your application. But now if I validate the model again, the validation is successful. It just says validation completed. Don't forget that there was also a new table in the database. The new table that I pulled into the model didn't get automatically added to an existing diagram, but it is part of the model, and you can see it in the model browser. But because I want the complete diagram to represent everything that's in the model, I'll go ahead and drag and drop this onto the diagram. Now, this table doesn't have any relationships to the other table. It's not even important what's in there. I just wanted you to see that process.